Good morning. It's really good to be back. I want to say permanently, but I just have to say it's not permanently yet. For those at Boksburg that's watching, I'm sure after Derek's announcements they were stressing. I'm not here permanently, not yet. I will go back someday. Just one announcement that Derek forgot to make. Sam Wishart's birthday today as well. He's 80 years old, so Uncle Sam, happy birthday. I'm not sure if I should say Laurie or Uncle Laurie. I think it's probably more Uncle Laurie, because I'm still very young. How do you follow that Lord's Supper?
Amen.
Wow, that was...
Amen.
I actually just want to do the closing prayer and go home now, because, that's it. What else do we need? Well done. Really, Uncle Laurie, that was really, 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 really good. I have the reputation, unfortunately, at Boksburg Church, to make people cry when I preach. I don't know if they're crying because they can't wait for me to finish, or if it's because I'm talking out of the Bible or something, I'm not sure, but I do have that reputation. But you beat me to that today, so I don't usually cry when I'm in the audience, I usually cry when I preach, but you had me today, so if I do cry somewhere along the line, then it's your fault.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of the prisoners said that as well. Some time ago, probably about a month or two ago, we lost one of our most valued members in the church, Auntie Anita Jeffen. I'm not sure if you guys know her. And during that sermon, I cried the whole sermon because we had a very close relationship with her. My wife and I, especially in the last year of her cancer treatment, were with her almost every day. We spoke to her every day, and we were almost part of this whole journey. And in that last sermon, I preached on God's comfort, or I should rather say I cried my way through that sermon, trying to talk about how God comforts us during difficult times. And after that sermon, one of our brothers came to me and he said, "Brother, are you going to cry like that as well when I die?" I said, "Of course I will. How do you know me? Of course I will." And as he turned around, I said, "It's going to be tears of joy, my brother, tears of joy." In opening, I want to tell you this morning, this sermon is not going to be one of my motivational sermons. I'm a topical preacher. Well, I'm not actually a preacher, I'm a psychologist, but I preach on topics. I don't preach on Bible verses. So don't give me a Bible verse and ask me to preach on that. I'm useless when it comes to that. So I choose a topic, and I try to inspire people whenever I preach. Today is not going to be one of those days. So I thank you for setting the scene, because it's not going to be a very inspirational, motivational sermon. You will probably never hear a psychologist say this, but if you walk out here today feeling depressed, then mission accomplished, for me. I told Derek and Sue this morning that unfortunately I'm going to leave your church this morning depressed, so you're welcome. Rudyard Kipling lived from 1865 to 1936, and although he was born in India, he was an Englishman, and you will probably know his books. I had to research that because I don't really read books like this, but he was the author of a book called Captain Courageous and How the Leopard Changed His Spots, and the Jungle Books, and he was an extremely famous writer. He made so much money with all of his books that someone once worked out that for every word that he wrote, he made $100. So for every single word, if he writes "and," it's $100. He probably used a lot of full stops to get a lot more $100, but he made a lot of money just writing. And there was this author once who had the opportunity to interview him, not the author, sorry, a reporter who had the opportunity to interview him. And he said that day, in an interview, he said, Rudolph, if you make $100 for every word that you write, here's $100. Give me a $100 word. And Rudolph looked at the oak, took the money, put it in his pocket, and he said, thanks. And he walked out. See, thanks or thank you or gratitude is such an important word, yet hardly ever used. When we talk about the younger generation today, and my sermon is not for them specifically, we say that they don't know how to say thank you anymore. They just assume that they are entitled to everything and they don't say thank you. But unfortunately, it's become something that we are struggling with as well. As Kipling is earning $100 for every one word that he writes, I wonder how much is a thank you to God worth today. But my sermon is not on that. My sermon is not how thankful we should be towards God today. It's very easy to write a sermon like that, and I've probably preached a million of those sermons, how thankful we must be for whatever God has done for us today. But I want to turn it around a little bit today. I want you to do a bit of introspection, and I want you, maybe if you want, just close your eyes for 1 second and imagine that Jesus was standing here in front of you today. Imagine it was Jesus talking to you this morning, and he comes to you this morning and say, Derek, I want to thank you today for what you've done yesterday. How does that make you feel? And I'm sorry for that cliched psychologist comment, but how does that comment make you feel? Say, Glenn, I need to thank you this morning for what you've done for me. If Jesus could say that this morning to you personally, I want to thank you. How would that change the way you do things or think about things? Imagine Jesus standing here and he showed you where the nails pierced his hands this morning. And he said, this is what I've done for you. What have you done for me? And I know there's a song that we sing, and it's so easy to come up with excuses or examples of, Lord, this is what I've done for you today. But is it really worth God standing up here, or Jesus standing up here today and saying, thank you. Brother Derek, thank you for what you've done. As I said earlier on, it's so easy for me to stand up here to preach or how thankful and how grateful we should be for what Jesus has done for us. But when we change the table a little bit and say, but how thankful would Jesus be for us? You know, the one is a change of attitude. When I tell you this morning, be thankful for what God has done for you, that is a change of attitude. But when I ask you, what would God thank you for? That's not a change of attitude, it's a change of behavior. Sometimes it's easy for me to say, God, thank you for what you've done for me. Thank you for that job. Thank you for the promotion. Thank you for this. Thank you for that. It's an attitude change. But if I have to change it to say, but Debri, thank you for what you've done for me. If Jesus had to say that, there is not an attitude change from my side. I have to change my entire behavior. Because it means my whole life has to change for Jesus to thank me. So what is your contribution this morning? What is your contribution to the church? What is your contribution to mankind? Your family, your friends? What if you contributed this week so that Jesus can tell you this morning, I want to thank you for what you've done. See, the question can be, have you given something this week, or were you one of the receivers this week? Were you one of those who encouraged someone this week, or were you sitting back waiting for other people to encourage you this week? How much have you given to the church lately? I'm not talking about money. How much have you given to the church, or were you one of those who received from the church this week? See, were you one of the givers of Jesus, or were you one of the takers this week? If any of these questions made you feel guilty, then I've achieved my objective this morning. Because when I wrote this sermon and when I prepared it, I felt guilty every single sentence I wrote. Because I kept on asking myself, Debri, have you done enough this week? Have you helped people enough this week? And what is enough? It's so easy for us to say, well, I've sent you a message this week to say, brother, I'm thinking of you. It's so easy for us to do that. But is that enough? I mean, Jesus gave his life for us. Yet we will send a message and think that's enough. I just think we've got this attitude, this Christian attitude, completely wrong. I've spoken to one of the brothers once, and he said, but I'm at church every Sunday. Surely God should be thankful for that. I was like, really? You're coming to church and you think God is thankful for you for coming to church? Dude, turn the tables. You should be thankful for God for the opportunity to come to church. Yet everything we do, or most things we do, we think we're doing it for God, not realizing it is a blessing from God so that we can actually do something like this. I'm sure the Boksburg people, when they saw this morning the scripture reading is Romans 12, it's like, oh, not again. So I love Romans 12 verse 2. It's just, I don't think there's ever a sermon that I preach that I don't work Romans 12 verse 2 in somehow or the other. I love that verse, be transformed. So I thought, well, I'm going to change it up a little bit. Let's read Romans 12 verse 1 and not verse 2. Therefore, I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. If you thought that becoming a Christian is the easy part of your journey into your spiritual life or in your Christian life, then you clearly missed out on Romans 12 verse 1. Being a Christian does not mean an easy life on earth. Being a Christian means you've got a safe life in the year after. But to get there is no easy task. And if you think for 1 second that being a Christian and having God on your side makes you invincible or it makes life just easy, brothers, you don't understand then what it means to be a Christian. What does this hard work really mean? When we talk about Christianity must be hard work, what does it really mean? And I want to go back to that SMS I was talking about early on. When you send someone an SMS, I should probably talk about WhatsApp, then it might make me sound a little bit more, older, like Glory. I think talking about the SMS has really make me seem ancient. But Is it hard work to send that encouragement, that WhatsApp message? And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. Please, for 1 second, I'm not saying that you shouldn't send messages. My question is, was it hard work to send a WhatsApp message thinking of your brother or sister? Have an awesome week. I don't know, for me it might be hard work to send a long message, and my wife will testify to that. I like Twitter language. 140 characters is more than enough. Do you need something at Checkers? No. But it's easy for us to send a message, yet when we ask you, what did you do this work that was so hard, so difficult? Oh, I sent a message. Or I sent 2 messages, let's make it really difficult. What was hard when you did that? What about praying? We keep on asking people, please pray for this person who's sick, please pray for that person who's traveling. And I'm not saying we shouldn't pray, please. I'm all for praying, and I do that every day as well. But is it really a sacrifice to pray? What hard work was it for you to pray? Maybe when you're driving somewhere and you close your eyes, yeah, that's maybe a sacrifice. But guys, when we do God's work and it's easy, then we're not really doing God's work. Because God's work requires of us to make a sacrifice. Romans 12 verse 1 talks about this living sacrifice. Now I Googled sacrifice, like we all do. Love the book of Google. And I want to give you 4 definitions that Google gives us about sacrifice. The first one is an act of slaughtering an animal or a person, or your children, no, just person, or surrendering a possession as an offering to a deity. The second one is Christ's offering of himself in the crucifixion. The third one, offer or kill as a religious sacrifice. And I love the fourth one, give up something valued for the sake of others' consideration. So here's the question. What have you given up something of value this week for someone? Now that someone is not necessarily someone in a church. Have you given anything of value this week for anyone around you? My first question I asked you this morning is, if Jesus could thank you for something this morning, this is where your answer is. If I've given up something of value this morning to someone in need, that's when Jesus can turn around and say, I want to thank you for this. Sorry, how far does the camera go? I get a bit claustrophobic around this thing. How much of value did you offer this week? There's another sermon I'm busy preparing, and that is the sin of benevolence. And I think benevolence is a giving, that's helping. But you see, when you give out of your wealth and it doesn't touch you, it's not hurting you, it's not taking away from you, you're not giving, you are sinning. See, if your giving doesn't hurt your pocket, and I'm just talking about financially, then you are sinning in your benevolence. See, when God said give, He didn't say give of your small change, He said give. In Romans 12 verse 1, He said it must be a sacrifice. Now let's talk about your time. Maybe that's easier. I'll give an hour a week here and there to preach quickly. Then my hour is done. I've sacrificed 1 hour of my Sunday morning. I mean, I could have played golf, or tried to play golf, but I'm preaching. I've sacrificed. And do we expect God to thank us for that? I did a Bible study, I want to say last year, but it's not last year because no one went to church last year. I think it was 2 years ago on emotions, managing your emotions from a biblical perspective. And it's a Bible study that was supposed to take, I think, 6 weeks. 8 months later, I was still trying to get through all the work. But I showed people how we can get so much more out of the Bible when we start reading the Bible with spiritual emotions. To understand what the writer was feeling, not just thinking when he wrote that. And I love that Bible study because it changed the way I read the Bible completely. Taking advantage of one another is not how God intended the church to be. But let's look at the other side of that. Are you taking advantage of others in the church, expecting everyone else to do the work in the church whilst you sit back and do nothing? In that case, we must change the verse to say, that reads, do not take advantage of each other, but fear your God. To I take advantage of others because I don't fear God. Now guys, you can preach, and I said this at Anita's funeral, you can try and preach anyone out of hell as much as what you want and as good as what you are at it. But these 3 words, 4 words, I don't fear God, was so difficult just to type and even more difficult to just say it out loud. But I'd rather not being born than ever say the words and mean it. I don't fear my Maker. See, I warned you in the beginning of this lesson, it's not going to be an easy one. It's not going to be a nice one. It's not going to be a motivational sermon where you walk out here and you're ready for the week that's ahead. It's not one of these inspirational lessons where you just feel like, man, I can conquer the world. And I did that for a reason, because today we need to walk out here conquering ourselves first. We have to conquer the evil that's within us and allow God, allow His mercy and His grace, as you said, Uncle Laurie, allow His mercy and His grace to set us free from this world, to allow us to become the children He wants us to be. You cannot commit to God if you don't commit to His church. You cannot give to God if you don't give to His church. You cannot be God's child if you're not part of His family, which is the church. God has sacrificed His Son for you. What if you sacrificed for Him today? When you go to bed this evening, and every other evening for that matter, I want you to ask Jesus, did I bring you glory today? Jesus, did I work for you today? Jesus, did I bring you sacrifice today? And just maybe, just hopefully, just prayerfully, Jesus will say to you, yes, my child, you did. I want to thank you for what you have done for me today. Will you all please stand as we sing our closing song?